So I made a little bit of an oops, and the video file for the intro was ruined. But today I'm hanging out at the Avian Reconditioning Center in Apopka, Florida. They invited me out to try my hand at falconry, but their head falconer, Bill, also just let me hang out with their owl and one of their falcons and talk about them here. So my initial reaction holding an owl is, you can see her compared to me, she's pretty big. She barely weighs anything. Weighs very, very little. And this is my first time holding an owl. Earlier, I was holding Ford the Aplomato falcon, and that was my first time holding any bird of prey. So we're doing a lot of firsts today. Ella here is an American barn owl. And one of my favorite things about barn owls, they are cosmopolitan. And what that means is that they are found all around the world. So there's different subgroups of barn owl found across Europe, Africa, Asia, and America as well. And she is an American barn owl. And they get their name specifically because they like to go hang out in human-made structures. They also hang out in a lot of nesting boxes that are built by different organizations and volunteers to provide them additional nesting space. So this is Ford, and Ford is an Aplomato falcon. And this isn't a bird that you would see in Florida unless you're at a place like Ark. If you go to the south part of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, you have a better chance of seeing them there. But where you'll really see these falcons is throughout Central America and all the way through South America. Now, Ford is a falcon. And a lot of people want to know, what's the difference between a falcon and a hawk? How do you actually tell the difference? Falcons are like a jet. They're very aerodynamic. They have very sharp wings, and they can very quickly kind of turn, and they're very agile and bank around a lot. Think of them as like a fighter jet. Versus hawks have really broad wings and are generally a lot bigger. Another way that you can tell the difference between hawks and falcons is if you look at the nostrils here, you'll notice that there's this little dot in the middle of the nostril. That's called a tubercle. And that is a trait that falcons have that hawks do not have. So that's a really quick way to tell them apart. One really cool thing that you can do with owls that are in rehab situations is they will actually take care of owlets, little orphaned baby owls that need a parent. And you can take the adult owl and present them to the owlets, and they will sometimes just start taking care of them on their own, just like it's their own. The good thing about owls is that they can't count, so they will just take care of 2, 3, 4, 5, several different owlets that they'll start taking care of. And you can actually raise them and then release those owlets whenever they fledged from the nest back into the wild. So here at Ark, they recently had one of their other barn owls, like Ella, a barn owl named Henry, took care of 4 owlets, and all 4 of those owlets were actually released 2 weeks ago. Ford here is a little bit bigger than the 2 falcons that we find most commonly in Florida. We'll see the American kestrel and the Merlin. And if you go down to South Florida, you'll see a really weird falcon there called a crested caracara. We were seeing them earlier here at Ark. And you would think that a falcon like this would be related to the other falcons like the Merlin and the kestrel that are in Central and South America. But weirdly enough, the Aplomato falcon's closest living relative is the New Zealand falcon, all the way on the other side of the world. Isn't that weird how species are able to disperse like that? I have a little bit of a confession about barn owls, specifically about baby barn owls. They creep me out. They creep me out a lot. I have a horrible fear of like alien abduction. It's not real. I've never been taken, as far as I know. And my problem is that baby barn owls look just like an alien. There's tons of videos of baby barn owls just standing upright, and they look so incredibly creepy. You watch that movie, The Fourth Kind, where there's a barn owl that's actually an alien in it, the whole film. Creeps me out. But seeing Ella here and seeing her just chill out makes me feel a lot more calm, makes me feel a lot more relaxed, and getting to see an animal like this, it makes me feel better about it and maybe puts those fears at ease. There are a lot of different cultures around the world that regard owls in different ways. Maybe they regard them as a good omen or maybe a bad omen. And even today, we still see that with how people react to them. Seeing Ella here, I think she's a pretty good omen. She's just hanging out with me, and she's kind of closing her eyes a little bit, which makes me think maybe she's going to sleep. Should I pull her closer to me? I don't know if will she do the thing? Will she park up against me? I don't want to make her uncomfortable.
That's the eyes closed. It's just when she's relaxing, and accepting her fate on what's going on right now.
Accepting her fate. Well, I don't want her to be accepting her fate.
She's comfortable. She's all her body posture right now indicates she's quite comfortable.
That's cool. Oh, I feel so special. And because we do find falcons in different areas of the world, even in the ranges that they do exist, we can see a lot of diversity there. If you go to the southern part of South America, a lot of the Aplomado falcons there have this kind of rusty red coloration. But the further north you go, the more consistently they'll be kind of closer to a black and white coloration. If you see like the Aplomado falcons that are in Texas, they have kind of a black and white coloration, a little different from Ford here. Do they have the offset eardrums as well? Okay.
Yep, and one face is up and the other down as well.
It's kind of neat though, is if you want to look, if you look at her facial disc here, you see how these feathers here are a little different.
Oh yeah.
Right behind those feathers is where her ears are located.
Gotcha.
So if you actually really look at them, you'll see that they are not perfectly symmetrical on her face.
And I see it on her too, her toe, the nail. If you look at the talon, it's a comb. And it's on that second toe there.
Oh, there it
You
is.
see just right there on that edge there, you see a little extra keratin coming up. That's a comb.
So we'll get an up close shot of that whenever we're finishing up with her. But I know that Chuckles widows have that as well. They have like a comb on their
And that would make sense too, because they probably do quite a bit with making sure
preening and everything.
But yeah, because they can preen everywhere except for their face, and they need to make sure that facial disc is pristine and perfect.
I'm sitting here editing this and realizing that what we just said doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, so here's some additional context. On the leading edge of an owl's wing, they have these little teeny tiny hair-like feathers called fimbriae, and those feathers are specifically what allows owls to fly silently. They don't show up very well on camera, but here's a picture of them. They were also pointing out that Ella naturally has a comb that grows on her talons in order for her to groom her fimbriae so that way they work properly. That's also really hard to get on camera, so here's a photo. Then I was pointing out that another nocturnal bird species called a chuckwill's widow, who also flies silently, also has a comb on its talons to groom its fimbriae. This phenomenon is called convergent evolution, where the same trait shows up in two different species that occupy a similar niche. It's pretty cool. With falconry, which is practiced all throughout the world and has been practiced for thousands of years, a lot of falconers like using Aplomado falcons as falconry birds because they are known to be very charismatic. They have a good personality. And you can see Ford is just here hanging out with us. And he's looking right at the camera. So he's like especially interested. I think he's more interested in the fuzzy thing on top of the camera, but he is watching it very intently. And he has such a good personality. Whenever we take our eyes off of him, he starts kind of crying a little bit, trying to get us to look back at him, which is cool to see. Whenever you think of the noises that owls make, you probably think of them doing the classical hoot, like a great horned owl, or some of the louder who sounds like what a barred owl makes. Barn owls do not hoot. They make 22 different sounds, and none of them are a hoot. The one that they're most famous for is just screaming. They screech really, really loud, and it sounds very scary, especially if you're going into a dark structure or into a tree. And that's a good way to scare something, but it's also a good way for them to communicate to one another. Some falconry birds, you might notice on Ford, he has this little backpack, and that's actually a transmitter that Bill, his trainer, uses in the event that while he's flying Ford around, if Ford flies off, you can use that tracker to figure out where he's gone and get him to come back. That's a cool tool that falconry birds have on them. Falconry is still practiced in a lot of ways more than just a hobby. Bill was telling us that it's such a useful rehabilitation tool for their animals and a good source of exercise for their resident birds, but it's also a great way to kind of do a health checkup on a bird that you might be wanting to release, or you might be checking out to see if they're good to release, if they're healthy enough for it, if they've healed properly. Additionally, there's ways that falconers find employment in the agricultural industry. What they'll do is they'll take their bird and they'll fly it out among the fields and chase off some of the smaller bird species that would be there trying to eat things like
berries or fruits or even seeds that they might be growing. And this is a cool way to use this animal's natural status as a predator of birds to kind of scare away some of the other birds. And then you don't have to use things like pesticides or any of the other chemical treatments that ultimately can harm wildlife in the end. In the 1950s, 60s, there were a lot of birds, especially birds of prey, that were affected by something called DDT. It was a chemical that was used in a wide variety of applications, but what they didn't realize is that it weakens the eggshells of birds. So you would have larger birds like eagles or the California condor, which almost went extinct because of it. The parents would go to sit on their eggs, and because the eggshells were so thin, they would crack. And now you have to deal with the fact that you've broke your kid. Now, Bill was just telling me that the spotting that Ella has here is a distinct female barn owl feature that makes her much more attractive to male barn owls. So they would see this spotting and they would say, oh, hey, you're very pretty. And I can say you are very pretty, Ella. She is such a gorgeous bird, and it's so cool to be able to see her up close. And I'm blown away. I'm blown away. I get kind of lost in the sauce hanging out with a critter like this, just appreciating that I get the opportunity to be this up close to them. And you can get this up close to them too if you come to visit ARC and take part in the Falconry or the Owl Experience. You can actually come here and hang out with Ella and get to hold her just like this and see her up close and appreciate them. And doing that allows you to not only have that experience, but also to support an incredible organization. And that's a really cool way that not only we can give back to them, but also you can partake and get a little bit more up close. They allow up to 4 people in the event itself, and you get to participate. So bring your friends, family, and get to have a day where you hang out with an owl. How cool is that? So I'm Zak Cole. This is the Falconry Experience at the Avian Reconditioning Center, and thanks for checking out what makes Florida so wild.
I want to give a huge thank you to Bill and Nicole from ARC for letting me and my cameraman Zach and his wife Annalise come out and hang out with the birds all day. It was so cool. If you are interested in having the Falconry Experience at ARC, there is a link down in the description. It is a great way to get up close to these birds as well as support a really cool nonprofit. And until then, I'll catch you on our next adventure.